One bit of news, though, with Punk that caught my attention from Fightful is that not only has a program with Chris Jericho been pitched to CM Punk, and we already knew that, but Punk himself has expressed an interest in wanting to work with Samoa Joe, who is currently the reigning Ring of Honor television champion. Joe has not appeared on any AEW television show since Revolution. He has been exclusively ROH. Fightful cannot confirm if the pitch was for a one-off or an extended program, but Punk is the one pushing for it. And then, after this news broke, Punk posted a video on Instagram. Because this guy, he knows what he's doing. He went on Instagram, posted a video of himself working out on the treadmill to the song Another Body Murdered, which happens to be Samoa Joe's very first theme from Ring of Honor. He sure knows how to get people talking. Punk and Joe have not shared the ring together in almost 20 years. 2005 was the last time they worked a match together. That was a four-way where Jamie Noble won the Ring of Honor World title. They had a trilogy of matches in Ring of Honor in 2004 that a lot of fans remember very fondly. It included back-to-back 60-minute draws. The second one is the more famous of the two. I know it got the 5-star treatment from Meltzer and The Observer. And then Joe ultimately beat him in the third match. In every single match those two ever had, CM Punk did not win any of them. Samoa Joe is the one man that CM Punk could never beat. The one mountain that he could never climb. That trilogy is what really launched their careers, elevated them to that next level. The following year is when we got the Summer of Punk, and the first Summer of Punk, and he signed with WWE. See, we're on the verge of 3 Summers of Punk. Summer seems to be his favorite season. We had the Summer of Punk in 2005 in Ring of Honor. We had the Summer of Punk in 2011 in WWE. And now we're about to get the 3rd Summer of Punk here in AEW. But coming out of that trilogy, we had Punk signing with WWE the following year, and Samoa Joe, signed with TNA and started his run there. But when Punk debuted for AEW, and then Bryan Danielson signed right after, right as when Danielson debuted, and then Samoa Joe eventually, many months later, came in. I tried, if you remember on some of the shows, I tried to will a triple threat into existence with those 3, and we never got it. CM Punk against Samoa Joe, just for the promos alone. Those promos would be fucking epic. I am way more excited to see that than I would be Punk against Chris Jericho and him feuding with the Jericho Appreciation Society for 9 months. I say book it for that first Collision in Chicago. Punk and Joe, book it for Chicago and have Joe beat him again. Just like old times. That should be more than just a one-off. I would book that as CM Punk's return match, and I would have Joe go over. I'm dead serious. CM Punk loses to Samoa Joe. He still can't get the job done, even after all these years. He's going to have to fight for it. The Jericho stuff is going to be there waiting after he finally beats Joe, right? I don't see how the Jericho program has to be first. If anything would have to be first, it would be Punk and something with the Elite, and it's very clear that's not going to happen. And I understand why. So that's not happening. Jericho and Punk, you could always do Jericho and Punk. I'm sure Jericho is just licking his chops for Wembley Stadium because he knows that if he wrestles CM Punk, that's going to be, if not the top match, one of the top matches on the show. So I'm sure he wants that. But I'd be way more invested in Punk and Joe first, and you create a program out of it. You get 2 or 3 matches out of it. But if they're going to do that, and it's not just a one-off, Joe has to go over in that first match. Just imagine the reaction and the shock from the people in Chicago, who just assume, I'm sure, that Punk is going to win his first match back, and he loses. We know CM Punk is going to be the main star on Collision on most weeks to keep him separate from the Elite. Meltzer says there are still possible legal issues in play, and that has a lot to do with the 2 sides not speaking to each other. From someone near the top, he was told the 2 sides are no closer to a resolution today than they were before. We are probably less than a week away from the official announcement that CM Punk is returning to AEW. Okay, and 5 weeks away from that actually happening. We've been hearing about possible legal issues since September. It is now May. It is ludicrous that this is still going on, and no move has been made one way or the other. Meltzer says at least one person is willing to apologize and has wanted to for a while, but is not allowed to make contact, and it is not Punk that is in reference to. This is all very annoying, because the report only a few weeks ago suggested that Punk was willing to apologize. Now it's somebody other than Punk who wants to apologize, which means that both sides want to apologize, but something is preventing them from doing so. The only thing I can think of that makes any sense, well, there's two things. One is that it could involve Ace Steel, who was the only one fired out of this whole fiasco. If he's threatening to sue the company for wrongful termination or some such thing, that could potentially be holding things up. Although I don't see how that would affect these guys apologizing to each other. Or, and this is maybe more likely, if someone is still holding the threat of legal action over their heads, then no one can apologize, because that would be an admission of guilt or culpability. And maybe their lawyers have advised them against doing so. Don't say you're sorry. If you say you're sorry, then you could be on the hook. You know, Kenny Omega, when he was on Renee's podcast a few weeks ago, he said that he thought they could work things out, but that the issue is out of their control, and they've basically been sworn to silence. Maybe Larry the dog is threatening to sue for pain and suffering. He wants his dental work covered, and he wants a new chew toy. This whole thing is every bit as much of an embarrassment today as it was in September when it happened. Only now, Punk is on his way back. Contract negotiations with Omega and the Young Bucks are said to still be ongoing, but there's been no movement of late. I wouldn't be in any rush to sign if I were them either, not with all this bullshit going on. But beyond Punk, it looks like Miro and Thunder Rosa may end up on Collision as well, if there is any kind of real brand split that we've heard about. We saw both of them on Dynamite for the first time in months. Miro has not wrestled since All Out in September. And Rosa has not worked a match since August. Her back is still said to be very bad. So even though she showed up on television on Wednesday, she's no closer to coming back to the ring. But they may end up dumping her on that show anyway. It's almost like we'll put all the outcasts of the company on the Saturday show.